So speaking of taming monsters, Tiff, kind of brings us to our topic for today. I don't know if it's definitely monsters, but I think people have monsters in their heads, don't you think, Tiff? I mean, do you know people who have those things in our head that scare us, that keep us from engaging with people in a positive way? And you know people who are naturally suspicious of folks, right?
Oh yeah.
And you know, I mean, what's your way of interacting with people? Are you I'm one of those people where I'll give you my trust until you show me that you don't deserve it, right? And I know there's
Yeah.
some folks who are the opposite, where you need to earn my trust, and so you're regularly on the sus side of trust until you show me that you're not. So where do you think you fall on that?
I, generally speaking, I trust you until you give me a reason not to, right? I always try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Um, and also time has taught me to trust my gut. Because again, I always try to think the best of everybody. I think everybody's got something special about them. And but there's just people sometimes who give me a weird vibe. And I've learned to trust that intuition, to trust like that weird vibe. And so I can still be polite and kind to him, but I'm definitely not going to trust him. I will be friendly, but keep distant. But I try not to just judge people right off the bat. Like I want to give you the benefit of you're a good person. But when my intuition kicks in, I definitely might be a bit more cautious. But I also can see red flags. I was colorblind to flags for most of my life. Colorblind. Even my husband, when I met him, he's the opposite. He's the one like I don't trust anybody until you give me a reason. We were together 8 years before he trusted me. Let me tell you, it took a long time to break down that barrier. So he's naturally skeptical, but he's also a really good judge of character. And so
Yeah.
when I met him, I remember he came into my social circle and he told me, most of your friends are not your friends. And I said, first of all, you don't even know them. First of all, these have been my friends for years. These are people who love and care about me and this, that, and the other. And he was pretty much right about most of them, to be honest with you. Most of the friends that were my friend circle then I don't talk to anymore for various reasons. And he was right about every single one of them. We were friends, but I was the friend and I gave to people who didn't give like a whole lot back in return, this is not true for all of my old friends. This is just for a good handful of them. Some were true friends and we still communicate, we still talk, but a lot of them we haven't talked in years and apparently nobody misses each other, so I guess we weren't very good friends after all.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but I also think working with people and working in human services um gives you so much exposure, I think is the word I'm looking for, to people and people's different personalities and motives. And um I think I've met more really good people than I've met bad people. And so I keep that in mind when I interact with people, that there's a pretty good chance they're a good person, even if there's certain things about them that maybe cause me pause. Maybe I don't really appreciate how they communicate or what they communicate, but I can see kind of past that to like, what are they trying to say? What do they need? What are they advocating for? I don't take it personal, but I think most people are good.
Yeah, and I believe you too. I think the vast majority of people are good. I think
Mhm.
we've already talked about this in the pod, where it's just, what is the percentage of folks that are truly evil, that have, that are just, malintention with narcissistic behavior and, mental health disorders that can lead to, you know, um, maltreatment of other people. What is it, like less than 10%, or is it right around
Yeah,
10%? You
10%.
know,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, like, just thinking about that idea of how we give out trust, talking about human services. I was having this conversation earlier this week with folks and talking about the impact that we have on people that we serve. And, you know, a lot of people that I've worked with and that I've interacted with in human services, they have a feeling of the folks that we serve where, folks are trying to game the system, right? And
Hmm.
they're trying to take advantage of stuff. And I mean, I had coworkers that used to check, as much as they could, and give a SIU referral, to have their investigated just because someone looks, the other way when you ask them a question, right? So, you know, as much as I'm with you, the vast majority of people are inherently good. And when I talk to people about this, most people raise their head, nod their head. And I say, what's the percentage of people that, you interact with that are intentionally trying to defraud you or defraud the county? And it's always single digits, right? But
Hmm.
here's the challenge. As much as we have folks who know this cognitively and empathetically recognize that most people are just trying to, get by in their lives, if it's 10% of people that are defrauding the system, the other 90% get treated more often like that 10%.
Right.
And this comes from people who say, yeah, most people are inherently good, but then still treat people in that way where they're not giving them that benefit of doubt. They're not establishing the fact that we trust that person, letting that person know that we trust you inherently. So why do you think that is, Tiff? I'm just curious.
So what I think it is that so working with people who are like brand new to the county versus
Hmm.
people who have been there for a while, um, I think that the majority, and there's nothing that's always true or never true, but the majority of people who start, I think, really come in with the intention of I want to do a good job, I want to help people, I want to improve my community, I want to help the less fortunate. And they have like this real great sense of they're going to really do good for people. And so they do trust and they do like I still like remember like people's first interview when they interview their first client and they're so excited and they come back and they're like, oh my God, I got to interview and this like it's really kind of a beautiful experience to witness. Um, and then they get lied to. They get one of those small number of people who have lied to their face and they take that very personal. And so once I think someone's been exposed to a few bad apples with for lack of a better word or people who don't tell the truth or omit part of the truth or bend the truth to get what they need, then the people who are so trusting and so generous get a little jaded for like I think might be the
Hmm.
word where you've got me once, you're not going to get me again.
Yeah.
And so they become naturally suspicious. And so um I can't say I've never fallen into that trap. I've done this for most of my adult life, and I think people's like motivation and feeling kind of waxes and wanes, but it does like a huge disservice to the people that we help that actually do need the help, which is the majority of people who are in a bad situation or in an emerging situation when we hold it against them that somebody else lied to us. Now, this is not to say that we don't like have to clarify discrepancies. This doesn't mean we don't have to ask clarifying questions, but I want to assume that people are telling the truth. And when the math is not mathing, and sometimes it doesn't, to be a bit curious, you know? So if someone's like, I haven't had any income in 2 months, and you're like, okay, how have you been supporting yourself? Like, how have you been making ends meet? Like, ask some more questions about that. I've been working off my savings. I've exhausted my student loans, or I mean, people have different ways. You don't have to have coming in every month to pay your bills. And so, and then you get their bank statement and you see deposits and you're like, well, what's this deposit? And what's that deposit? Now I have to clarify, but it doesn't always mean that it's fraudulent. Like what you call income and what I call income we may not have the same definition. So you may have been perfectly honest with me when you answered it, even if I have a different definition. So let's not use that as an opportunity to vilify, but clarify, right? Let's clarify instead.
Yeah.
And so I think the other part of this too is that in any kind of profession, I think that we become very habitualized to our lingo and our language and like what a normal like a normal interaction is, whether we're a doctor or a dentist or a human services or a banker, like we have these norms. And so if my norm is suspicious, then that becomes how I treat everybody, even if it's not what maybe I'm consciously thinking. But you know what, the other thing I think workplace culture has a lot to do with it. Tons and tons. Like I was talking to a county far, far away a few weeks ago. I was there doing a training on intake. They send out a special investigations officer for every application for CalWorks. So before this place can grant CalWorks to any family, a law enforcement officer goes to their house or their location and does an investigation before they can get benefits. Like to me, I was flabbergasted, for lack of a better word. And I'm not here to judge their county policy. I don't know what their vibe is there. But for me, I'm thinking as a program person, like, what message does that send? And how does that incentivize people when they really, really need help to come and get benefits, knowing that a police officer with a gun is going to show up to my house and rifle through my drawers? Like that would be an incentive for me not to get help. And maybe that's the plan, but to me that kind of broke my heart. And this is no offense to the people who have to do it. They're not decision makers, but to me that strong sends a really strong message to the people that are in the most vulnerable position to ask for help. Just the same, by the way, as when I hear stuff like, we need a drug test everybody who applies for aid. Well, you know what? How about we start at the people making decisions? Like, let's drug test the Senate. Let's drug test the House of Representatives. Let's drug test the president. Let's start there. Let's start there, and then maybe we can trickle down to everybody else. But to me, it's like stereotyping or stigmatizing people who are vulnerable is I don't know. To me, it's disgusting, and it's easy to do. It's easy to get stuck in that pattern, but you have to really be thoughtful about like what message that sends. And I definitely try to keep in mind the person who is in dire need, who doesn't want to be there, who's exhausted all of their other resources and they need to feed their kids. Like, why make them feel guilty for being a good parent? You know what I mean? Why make them feel bad for being vulnerable enough in their crisis to ask for help? That's not who we should be drug testing or sending police officers to their home. That's terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I mean and we know that this happens, right? And so that's why I had that question, we know that this happens. We know that people feel that way, and people will say that to each other and say it to you, and then at the same time turn around and say, "Yeah, but I believe most people are good." Right? So either they don't believe it or they are not backing up what they believe for different reasons. And like you mentioned, just the idea of workplace culture. I mean, it's just that idea of, I mean, when you go through training, what if your trainer says, you got to make sure that every client's doing what they're supposed to do, and not every client's going to tell you the truth. So you got to be on guard because we can't be wasting county money or public assistance money. It's just like police, every person is a suspect, right? And so if you go into your job thinking every person is capable of committing a crime, how does that affect the way that you interact with that person, right? Are you building that trusting relationship where they give you information about stuff that maybe you didn't get? That's another thing, right? Sometimes we get that information. I get that information too. I had a client who finished a 3-week job club with me, and then the last day said, "Carl, thanks for everything, and I really learned a lot, but I have a problem. I can't pass a drug test." And I said, "Well, why?"
Mm-hmm.
"Well, 2 weeks ago, or last week, I was at a party and I was in the garage, and with my girl, and then my cousin came in with his friends and they started smoking weed in the garage and they hotboxed the garage. And so I think I have secondhand smoke, and which I could have said, yeah, sure, you were probably out smoking weed. Either way, it didn't matter to me. Okay, but
Right.
okay, thank you for telling me you can't pass a drug test. But how many people would say, well, why would you put yourself in that situation? Right. And so, it's kind of blaming the victim, but then also blaming the choices that you make. But it's like we talked about, we get in the blame game, right? That person becomes a
Right.
persecutor. We're trying to assign blame. And and it hurts. It hurts when we have one thought of how people will do things and then they don't do it, right? Someone has a phone appointment, someone has an in-person appointment and they don't show up. And rather than call you and tell you that they're not coming, they just don't call you. So you think that they're just being underhanded and you take it personally. When maybe it was, gosh, my car died, I got a flat tire. I'm gonna miss my appointment. They probably think that I'm out doing something stupid, so I'm just not even gonna call them.
Hmm.
How many of those people are there who are not inherently evil, but don't always necessarily tell the truth for fear of what might happen when the truth comes out, right? How many people that we know are good people that lie,
Right.
right? And so, I mean, I can't tell you I've never not lied before to protect somebody, right?
Hmm.
So that they didn't hear things that would make them upset. Most of my lies have been, for personal gratification, but then some of them, hey, how do I look? And oh, you look great. You look great. Those things like that. So it hurts when we find out that what we thought was going to happen didn't happen. It's a personal, we take it personal. Our brain takes it personal. Our brain takes it to the point where a lot of times we'll say, why didn't I catch that?
Hmm.
And so then we feel shame very often. We'll feel shame and blame, just like our girl always talks about. And I'm drawing a
Brene,
blank.
our homegirl,
Yes,
Brene,
yeah,
Brene Brown.
our homegirl Renee, yeah, right. And so we have that personal idea of blame or shame, and I'm not going to get fooled again. Right? There's that famous song, "We won't get fooled again," right? So the next person who comes in who might look like that person or might have the same story, yeah, I've heard that before. And
Right.
this happens in case management. This happens in relationships. This happens in, you know, whether they're intimate or personal or professional relationships. How many times does a staff not trust a new manager because the last manager was trash? These
Right.
are things that we see a lot of, and we'll get to those in a minute, but just thinking about that idea of, if we know that 90% of folks that are coming in to receive services are just doing the best that they can, and they may not necessarily be successful for 150 different reasons other than I'm trying to get over on Tiffany. Why do we take that as you're evil, you're bad, you deserve to be punished, you deserve this sanction, which I'm going to do because I don't even want to hear it, right?
Yeah.
It's because we don't want to deal with that idea of, I can't believe they fooled me. And so it's a challenge. It's a challenge for good, well-meaning people to how they treat well-meaning people in a way that is negative. And like you mentioned, it's that disillusionment that we talk about. It's also the culture, right? If you have a trainer who says, not everyone's going to tell you the truth, you know, or you just even in society, right? When I was training in Tulare County, far, far away, last year, and somebody that works in child welfare said she was having lunch with a friend, and the friend said, "Hey, so let me ask you a question. You work with the worst people in the county, dot, dot, dot." So if the culture sees anybody who interacts with the county in child welfare, if you have an open child welfare case, or if you're on public assistance, you're immediately seen as less than and one of the worst people in the county, right? I've seen cases, I've heard people talk about cases where a mandated reporter called in an allegation of neglect, which didn't even stand up to neglect. Oh, the child's home alone for 2 or 3 hours at a time.
Hmm.
Shit, she'd have been thrown in jail if that was the case when I was a kid. I was a latchkey kid. I figured out how to take the bus and to make my own fried egg sandwiches and spam sandwiches and mac and cheese on my own. That's something that a lot of us grew up with and that we learned to deal with. But yet when we see other people, we hold them to a higher standard. And so that,
Right.
and society holds them to a higher standard. These are things that I think are detriment to us being able to provide services to those people who are most needed in our communities. And I believe that it is in a way criminalizing people who ask for assistance.
Yeah.
So how do we decriminalize people on public assistance? And that's such an important thing. How do we get that thought out of our head? Hey, they might screw us over, right? Why do people lie? Right?
Right. But you know what? The Walmart might screw you over. Uh, Nordstrom might screw you over.
Target might
Uh,
screw you over. Yeah.
Charles Schwab might screw you over. Like
Mhm.
there's lots of places that take advantage. We're like everything's a scam at this point. I don't know. I think I'm super jaded. Things a scam. Um, when it comes to like people needing help, here's like where I always come from. Their need is there. The need is there, whether they qualify or not is a whole different story. Um, but if I come in and take the time to apply for benefits, whether it be cash, CalFresh, or SNAP benefits, depending on where you're listening, or Medicaid or Medi-Cal, like whether I'm eligible for it or not, I have a need because I'm not going to, like, people don't get rich off of public assistance. By the way, hold up, hold that thought. Okay. Because let me tell you a little something. I might have to look it up. But recently, there was a huge, huge fraud in the CalFresh SNAP benefits, the food stamps, as we all know it, old school. It was in the 60 million mark, and it was from the people who legislate it. It was a scam from the people who are the lawmakers around and the protectors of that program, not the people receiving the food assistance. And this is where I think I get the most pissed off is that I'm not going to say that there's not fraud, waste, and abuse in government programs, especially cash and CalFresh and Medi-Cal. There is definitely fraud, waste, and abuse that's happening. But I can probably from my 20 years of doing this work, the majority of that is not coming from the people who are actually getting the benefits.
Right.
It's not even the employees providing the benefits. A lot of times it's people like football stars who take
Far? Yeah.
yeah, like football stars who take $1 million out of the grant money to do other stuff. It's you know, people who are scamming the system, but it's not the clients, right? Again, I'm not saying that people don't lie, but it's to fill a need. If I know that if I come in and I tell you, look, I'm at the worst part in my life. I just exhausted all of my resources. I need help. I don't have medical insurance anymore. But someone told me one time that if I own a home, I'm not going to have Medi-Cal. I'm not going to be able to get health insurance. I might not tell you that that house is under my name, even though
Sure.
I'm exempt and it doesn't count, by the way. Let's just clear that. You can own your home and still get benefits. Um, but if I think that that's going to disqualify from the need, and that means that my child can't go to the doctor for their ear infection, I'm going to do what I have to do to take care of my kids or myself or my family or whoever, whatever I'm doing. So, like where I see like yes, we have an obligation to maintain the integrity of the program. We do. We 100% do have to make sure that people are being honest and accurate, but I'm not going to treat you like you're a criminal because you came in and asked for benefits. I'm not going to interrogate you. Am I going to ask questions? Am I going to clarify a million times over? Yes. If there's something that's staring out at me that doesn't make sense, I'm going to ask you some more questions and make sure I have it and have you put it in writing Because, some people do commit fraud, but guess what? We have safeguards around that, and they pay it back and they get charged for it. And then sometimes they have criminal penalties and disqualification periods for not telling the truth at their interviews. Like, it's not a crime that just goes unnoticed. Like, we have so many different ways of verifying and safeguarding, you know, the truth. We're looking at your tax records. We're looking at like your benefits that you're getting from the state. We can see if you have interest bearing accounts. Like, there's so many things that are happening behind the scenes to make sure people are telling the truth. But that's not happening at the higher levels. It's like absolutely ridiculous. And so um that criminalizing people because they're asking for help or putting them in a stereotype that if they're doing it over the phone. That was the other thing I've heard recently. Anybody who wants to verify over the phone must be committing fraud, or maybe they don't have a right to the office, or maybe they don't have someone to take care of their kids, or they don't have, the means to get to I mean, there's so much complexity to this. So, um, I had a client one time, and I take people at their word, right? And I verify, like we require verifications of so many things. So you don't just get to come in and be like, this is what my life is. We want to see check stubs, we want to see rent receipts, we want birth certificates, your citizenship proof, your social security numbers. We collect a lot of personal information from people in return for the pennies that we're really giving them. I mean, I want to be real clear. People are not getting rich off of public assistance at all, at all. It is not like what someone gets for their family size, I could spend on a weekend. You know what I mean? There is no way I can maintain a household on what people receive in public assistance. I'm sorry. It's not lucrative. Okay. So
It's
for
not a way to
me,
make ends meet.
no, it's literally like even if we use the government measurements, like if I go with Cash Aid, the CalWorks program, again at TANF and other states, but we compare their monthly income, what they bring in already, to something called the MBSAC, the minimum basic standard of adequate care. That's like the income threshold. This um, formula for how much it costs people to be housed, to have electricity, to have food and clothing, and healthcare. Like, these are the five measurements. This formula was calculated back in the 70s. Like, what's changed since the 1970s? So we're saying, like, for a family size of however many, if it's one, two, three, four, five, or however many people in your house, this is the minimum basic adequate standard of care that you can have. And then we're going to give you like half of that. So here's the minimum amount of money you need to survive. We're not even going to match that. So we're not even giving people the minimum basic standard of adequate care. And yet we're calling the people receiving aid the fraudsters. That's where I kind of have to, like, big picture. Do people in aid use drugs? Probably. Probably not all of them, but some of them probably do, just the same as some of the people working at the movie theater probably do drugs, just like some of the people who work at the DMV are probably using drugs, just like some of your Uber drivers are probably on drugs. I guarantee you, most of the people on Wall Street are probably on drugs. Most of your CEOs probably are on drugs. So to villainize people just because they live in poverty, get out of here. Like, I'm getting pissed off already. Like, why do I get all emotional on these podcasts? I'm already pissed off. But I was gonna say, I had one guy, they sign everything under penalty of perjury. Every form that you sign with the government, you sign under penalty of perjury. That way, if you do commit fraud, they can prosecute you. Um, I had one guy tell me, what if everything I told you was a lie? What if everything I told you in this interview was a lie? I said, well, think about that before you sign this form under penalty of perjury, because if it is all a lie and you're lying to make yourself eligible, you'll go to jail and I won't. So I'm going to take you at your word. Do you feel comfortable signing this under penalty of perjury? Because this is the permanent record. If you are committing fraud, this is what they're going to take to courthouse to say this is what you're verifying. So do you still want to sign? He's like, oh yeah, I just was testing you. I was like, okay. And guess what? That guy wasn't committing fraud. He was just being a brat. So I don't know.
So well, look,
It's it's a
I
it.
just
I could say it
I
both
just
ways.
I
Go
just
ahead.
did the
Sorry.
calculations to for a family of three, so a mom and two kids, you get a little less than 1,200 a month. And so just doing that math, that comes out to less than $7 an hour, right? When I
Hmm.
was, 20 years ago when I was doing case management, it was $3.40 an hour. So maybe it's doubled, but how many of us have tried to live on less than $7 an hour? Who the
Hmm.
hell's getting rich off of that, right? And
Exactly.
but people hear things. We all have radios, we all have TVs. We hear people demonizing, criminalizing people who are trying to scrape by and figure out how to do things. And a lot of folks who are, right now, we still have pretty much the hardest to serve folks, right? Those folks that could find jobs and get jobs, at the beginning of CalWorks, got those jobs, right? And so a lot of folks have job history issues, have criminal records, have drug issues, have been fired, have had, don't have the best resume, and we're expecting them to, to get a job and become self-sufficient when maybe they are living in I've been a failure. I failed at everything. Right. And so right now, I don't even believe I can get a job, let alone you making me get a job. And so, well, they're making, I'll just even call it $7 an hour. It's not, but look, it's $7 an hour. We're giving them $7 an hour. Anybody ever try to live off $7 an hour? Maybe in the 80s, right? And so this is something where people think that, you're coming up with all these different things. And you said the lawmakers, a lot of them, have been caught defrauding. There's stuff in the news, reading the San Francisco Chronicle, reading the LA Times, reading the New York Times. We hear about civic leaders defrauding nonprofits, charitable organizations, their own city coffers, right? And also giving themselves raises when there's hiring
Hmm.
freezes and people being laid off. So we know this stuff is happening way above our pay scale. Right? But yet when people just trying to make ends meet way below our pay scale, they're the criminals, right? And you see how it gets legislated. I'll give you an example. The state of Iowa, starting next January 1st, is limiting you being able to use your food stamp benefits for organic or whole foods. So your your food stamps have to be spent on organic stuff at the grocery store or at places like Sprouts or Whole Foods, wherever it is. So just think about how expensive organic and whole foods are. And those folks that are
So,
using those food stamp benefits, how far is that dollar going to go?
okay. So my blood pressure is at an all-time high right now because that's
It's bullshit. Yes. Yes. I'll say it for you.
look, I'm all for wanting people to eat healthy. Okay. I agree wholeheartedly that we want people to have healthy, nutritious food for them and their children and their families, regardless of socioeconomic class. Obviously, if you're in middle class or you're in wealth, you have more access to healthy and nutritious foods, and you're more likely to consume healthy and nutritious foods because the way that we put like value on food is not about quantity, it's all about quality and presentation, right? So, um,
Bridges out of
what
poverty.
where
Give a shout out.
right,
Yeah.
right. So where I like am having a really hard time even processing this is how do you tell people how to feed their family? And you're exactly right. Like whole like I again I have the luxury of being able to afford whole and nutritious foods. Like, not that that's what I eat all of the time. Um, but I can afford fresh fruits and vegetables. I can afford to go once a week to the grocery store and stock up on produce. But that's not the case for many families. Maybe I get a ride to the grocery store once a month and I have to buy stuff that's going to be shelf stable. We also have to take into consideration some people living in poverty don't have refrigeration. So, how do I go and buy whole foods that are going to spoil if I don't have a way to get to a grocery store? We also have people who live in food deserts and they don't have the luxury of going to stores that have produce aisles and fresh meats and fresh things. Like I understand like the intention of that, and I'm not opposed to people wanting people to spend money on fresh foods and live healthy lives. I'm not opposed to that. But I also have to recognize that that's not rooted in reality for many people. And it's limiting. It's very, very limiting. And it's going to create more hardship. And it's like, again, these policies are so out of line with like what people are really experiencing. And that's why our lawmakers have to get off of drugs. I'm just saying it. Maybe we need to start drug testing. Or or one of the things I've seen that I think is really freaking cool is to have these lawmakers live off of what people get public assistance. Now, I want to also say something really quick, real fast. Almost every single program is time limited. So I want to make sure for people who have no understanding of like public assistance programs that there are tons and tons of requirements. Like people don't just come in and get free money. Can I do that in air quotes? Free money. This is not just people coming and getting free money for like their whole lives. Cash aid has a time limit on it. CalFresh and food stamps have work requirements attached to them. Medi-Cal has all kinds of age and income and property requirements that are attached to it. Like these programs, there's citizenship requirements, by the way, for every single one of these programs. You have to be a citizen or a legal permanent resident, and it's not all legal permanent residents. It's a single tier or a handful of legal permanent residents. So undocumented people are not getting assistance. Like there's all of this
Their kids might
misinformation
get it,
out there,
but they're not part of,
but they're citizens. But
right.
they're
But
citizens. That's a
their
whole
kids
different thing.
will get it as citizens, but they won't get it, so they're not part of that total calculation. Get that straight,
Right.
folks. Illegal people who are undocumented, they are not receiving public assistance.
They are
If their
not.
kids are,
So,
as legal citizens, they are, but not the parents who are undocumented. Just make sure you know that. Test us, please. Go look that shit up. We will let you
right,
know. We will give you time. We'll wait.
right. And even for maybe some people who are undocumented that maybe at the only thing that they could potentially be qualified for is the medical assistance. And
That's one way too.
if they do get coverage, which by the way is very far and few and very limited, we have to send a form to immigration to let them know that they're receiving assistance. And it's limited only to emergency care or pregnancy related care. So that means that we're for all the pro-life people who are like, we got to take care of the babies. It's just to take care of the woman during pregnancy, and it is for emergencies only. So that doesn't necessarily benefit the immigrant. It benefits the hospital so that they get paid for emergency care and keeps
Right.
the emergency rooms going. So if you
Mhm.
have it's public health. It's not anyone taking advantage. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very, very limited. And in my years, I haven't seen tons of people who are undocumented coming in like, hi, I'd like to call myself to the attention of the US government. Can you please give me money? Like people aren't doing that. And I
And let
worked,
me
by the way.
and let me
I'll just
say
say, and
this.
go ahead and say that. Go
I'm
ahead.
gonna keep it real. I'm gonna keep it real right here, people. I have grown up and interacted with people my entire life who have been undocumented. In the neighborhoods I grew up in, the families I married into, and I can tell you the same. If we want to talk about percentage of people who are doing things the right way, the 90%, it's even higher, I guarantee you, for undocumented folks to come in and work so they can send
Mm-hmm.
money home or raise their children in a better place. There is a vast majority of families that I have come into contact with where their kids have benefited to the point where they have become productive American citizens and do things the right way. It is such a vast majority. If you have not had that experience, I understand why you fall for the okey doke. But let me tell you, both Tiff and I have had that experience. Most families with parents that came to this country undocumented have had kids that have made up for that exponentially in terms of the benefits they have to this country.
Mm-hmm.
End of rant.
Yes. And I'm going to second that motion to the third power and raise you one because many, many of those where the parents have been undocumented, but their children have been eligible for benefits still meet all of their reporting requirements. Report their income from employment, legal or not. They are letting you know that I did this job, I was paid cash, I'm working for this employer, working under the table. They have a different respect for the government than others. I'm going to say
Except
than others. It's a very
maybe
different
not
experience.
recently, maybe not recently where people are being picked up at their work sites where they're working hard. Did people who have never been out to a pizza, never been out to a farm, have never seen the work that folks do and have good backs and
Hmm.
have are not running in mud in 50-degree
Right.
weather with boxes of those strawberries that you like to eat.
Right.
I'm just saying, yeah, y'all gotta have some, please put some love on some of those folks. Yes. And I've had some people in my life who are not um, law abiding and are shady, and they deserve everything that they get, just like any other legal criminal deserves
Right.
everything that they get, right? But if you're putting that on the vast majority of folks who are just trying to do right by them, by their children, and by our society, you're really going to miss them when they are not here.
Hmm. Yep. Well, let me tell you real quick. I looked up that fraud case, $66 million that was siphoned off of SNAP benefits. It
Mhm.
was done by six people, one of them being a fraud investigator within the USDA. So $66 million. So the $227 a CalFresh that somebody might be getting because they didn't report that they had a roommate is probably never going to meet that $66 million. You know, again, I absolutely respect that we have to maintain the integrity of these programs and making sure that individuals are not knowingly or unknowingly committing fraud. Because I can unknowingly commit fraud. Like I can unknowingly maybe omit information because I didn't think it was relevant, didn't understand the definite, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
Um, but again, why are we criminalizing the people who need help and not the people who are actually committing the crimes? That's what I would like to know.
True story, Tiff. I had a client, single dad with two great little girls, and was a handyman. He had been working with construction. He had fallen on hard times. He was trying to make ends meet, doing odd jobs, reporting everything that he earned, self-employed, and also looking for work. And about 5 months into his case, eligibility recognized that they made a mistake in determining his income. Not that he didn't turn it in correctly. They made a mistake calculating the income. So he had an overpayment that he was now responsible for paying back. And
Hmm.
his, which he said, okay, okay, you guys gave me more money, but now I'm in the hole because I have to pay you guys back. I didn't know that this was something that happened. And so now I'm stuck to pay you guys back for something that I didn't do, and it's going to cut into what it is that I'm receiving. I didn't know I was supposed to not get that extra money, and I used it for my kids, right? So is that person a fraudster? Is that person a criminal? Or is that person, a victim of circumstance that happened as a result of an error, a system error that he did not initiate, but still that shows up in the fraud section. He's one of the fraudsters that show up in the stats.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What are we doing?
Right.
What when we are thinking about who deserves what, who gives us the right to make that determination?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it within us that makes us believe that what we think is correct for everybody?
Right.
So when someone tells a lie and we don't trust them, the next time you maybe don't write down your full income or overinflate your income to get a credit card. Which lie is worse,
Right.
right? When someone gives you an extra dollar out of the till and you keep it, oh well, they should be paying attention to that. Which one is worse,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's such a challenge. And you were talking about, the idea of quantity over quality and presentation, right? And I mentioned that idea of bridges out of poverty. I actually pulled up, my slide that I use for bridges out of poverty just to show you. And this is the work of Dr. Ruby Payne. And she identified different modes or what are called hidden values that people in poverty, as opposed to middle class and wealth, have. And the reason that they're hidden is because it's not something that is evident to folks who are not experiencing, the different classes. So folks in poverty may not always recognize what you think is correct. And if you've never been in a situation where you've had to experience what they're experiencing, maybe you haven't necessarily understood why that happens, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
just even looking at the idea of food, you mentioned food, right? For poverty, did we have enough? Did we have enough to feed folks, right? Could I feed my kids, right? As opposed to middle class, was it any good, right? I can tell I've gone from the poverty class to middle class. I was one of those kids standing in line at the canned food store, which is now grocery outlet, bargain market,
Bargain market.
right? But
I love
I
grocery
actually,
outlet.
me too, that's my place. Wine and ceviche. Don't sleep on my ceviche, Tiff. Don't rain on my parade. I'm telling you that ceviche is bomb. Anyway,
I'm
so,
not mad about it.
okay, cool. I want to get your blood pressure up. So I used to stand out in front of the canned food store with my grandma. She had the real food stamps, right? She
Mm-hmm.
raised
Oh,
five
the
kids on
paper ones.
welfare. Yes, the paper ones, right? She raised five kids on welfare. She worked from, sun up to sundown and still, right, back in the old days in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And she used to get the milk, USDA milk, the USDA butter, the cheese that actually melts correctly so that you can actually eat nachos without the oily stuff on the sides, all of that, right? And so she used to get that 8 pack of 99-cent hot dogs to feed me, my mom, and any of my four uncles that were in the house at the time. And so we got that mystery meat hot dog, that bar S cheap hot dog with, where it says beef, chicken, and pork parts. So now I get to go to the grocery store by myself, spend my own money. I walk past that 8 pack of hot dogs and I go get the all beef pack of hot dogs, a 4 pack for $5. Or I go to Costco and get that 16 pack for $12 of all beef, those Costco hot dogs, you can't pass them up. Whatever it is, I spend more money on them. Why? Because I can afford to be able to have that tastes good, right? So that's the idea of that quality over quantity. I don't necessarily have to worry about do we have enough. I want it to taste good. For wealth, you're right, it's about presentation, right? Was the raspberry swoosh on the tart done correctly? Was the chocolate drizzle on the sundae all around the cup? Was a little leaf in the latte done perfectly? Right? And that's a different place than somebody who is, hey, look, I don't care if the leaf works, man. Can I get a full cup of coffee? Because I need to stay awake because I'm working a double shift. And so, and you see some of these others, these are six different areas there, but there's 32 that were identified in Bridges Out of Poverty, which is it's a great book. It's a great training. I got to go through the training with El
Me
Dorado
too.
County. Shout out to Eldo. Love you guys. But just look at that idea of power, right? Big difference, right? The wealth, it's about expertise, it's about connections, it's about who you know,
Yeah.
right? For middle class, it's self-sufficiency. I take care of myself. I pay my own bills. I don't have anybody else paying my bills. And then for poverty, it's that idea. I don't have a whole lot, but I have my own personal respect as a human being and as a parent, and I demand you to give me that respect, or I'm going to fight about it. And so, could you imagine the poverty mindset client coming in? I demand respect, and the middle class worker that says, "Well, respect comes when you can take care of yourself, and right now you can't." Do you see where
Yeah.
that natural clash is? And can I tell you, it's not anybody's fault per se if you're not thinking about this. But if you are conscious of this and you recognize that there's a fundamental difference and you know why you feel that way and you continue to feel that way, are you in the right place? And are you providing the right impact for these kids who have no control over the actions of their adults? Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so talking
Yep.
about the food stamp thing in Iowa, you know what's going to happen? Somebody brought this up in one of the classes. People talk about food stamp fraud where people sell their food stamps. So, hey, look, can you get me, some top ramen, some mac and cheese because I can't use my SNAP benefits for it, and I will go ahead and buy something for you that's organic. And so, I'll buy you $50 worth of stuff. You buy me $50 worth of stuff so that I can feed my kids, right? And that's going to happen. And people are going to say you are frauding the government when people need to be able to make ends meet to feed their children,
Survival. It's literally
right?
survival. It's literally
Yes.
survival.
And
It's
and and
absolutely survival.
it's survival and it's prejudice. Let me tell you why it's prejudice. It's classism, because you're telling a person on SNAP benefits who might be working two jobs, people that worked for me in the Bay Area that were highly skilled direct support professionals. They had two jobs making 15 bucks an hour and still were eligible for SNAP benefits. So don't tell me people aren't working. Over 60% of people who receive food stamp benefits across this country are working 20 hours a week or more, right? And
Yeah.
so those people, right, who are receiving that, it's you're being classist against them because you're telling them they can't have top ramen and mac and cheese, but your kids can. Your
Yeah.
kids can. The neighbors next door can have top ramen and mac and cheese, while these kids who are on Snap, well, how come they can't have top ramen? How come they don't get to have top ramen to go to school so it's easy to cook? Well, it's because they're on welfare. Well, what's the difference?
Right.
That's classism, right? That is a prejudice, that is an inherent prejudice that is insidious. And this is what societies and states and local governments are doing. They are judging, like you mentioned, Tiff, they are judging people's right to be able to feed their families.
Yeah. And the thing is like here again, remember we said most of the rules are hidden rules, right? They're hidden rules.
Yeah.
So how does someone from middle class or wealth who's never experienced poverty make accurate decisions how people in poverty need to live? If you've never not had electricity, how do you decide like what's achievable for somebody or not? If you've never had to walk to the grocery store to bring your groceries home and it's 2 miles away. Like I remember when I was a kid, my mom had a wagon that she used to walk to the grocery store because we had one grocery store in town and she would walk to the grocery store and she would walk back with the groceries and I would be so embarrassed like, oh my God, everybody in the whole town knows my mom is like going to get her groceries at the grocery store and she's like as a kid you don't know the difference. Now I'm like my mom was so strong, to be able to do that. How Like, let people make their own decisions. And yes,
Yeah.
do people who are receiving benefits have an obligation to maybe give back to society? I'm going to say, yeah, but I guarantee you they've done it before and they'll do it after. This is just a period of time. Like, people who are living on benefits or people who are receiving benefits are just the same as you and I. They're just in a different economic situation. And many times it's temporary. Many times it's temporary. I actually do have a challenge for our listeners. For those who've not never experienced poverty or are making a lot of assumptions about the people who receive public assistance, there is a website called playspent.org, PLAYSPENT.org. It's a simulation game that really gives you a real life simulation. I don't know, there's no better word for it. Example of what it's like to live in poverty and some of the decisions that you have to make in poverty. So it has you live a month in the life of someone on a very limited income, making decisions, and how challenging it can be to decide. Like, we have a pet, right? I have a pet. Do people in poverty have the right, or have the, people who are living in poverty have the right to have pets, even if they're struggling for money? Like, pets bring a lot of joy. There's lots of social benefits to pets. There's lots of health and mental health benefits to having a pet. But what happens when their pet gets sick and they have to make a decision? Do I pay my rent or do I take my animal to the vet to have the surgery? Right? Like, those are decisions people, I think, that if you live in middle class or you live in wealth, that you take for granted. Like, oh, your dog is sick, you take him to the vet. What if I don't have the money to take the dog to the vet and now the dog is sick? I don't know what to do. I don't know how to manage that. Or I don't have the means to manage. It's not that I don't know how to. It's like, what do I do? And if you've already robbed Peter to pay Paul and he's not returning your calls anymore, like, that's a really tough predicament. So does that mean that people in poverty don't get to have the joy of having pets for themselves? Like, no. We have to find ways to, again, create opportunities for people to have access to things that make their lives easy and simple. And it's the bare minimum. They're not criminals. Poverty is not a crime. It's not a crime. Asking for help shouldn't be a crime. And we
Do you know what,
shouldn't
Tiff?
treat people like criminals.
And here's the problem, though. It affects us in legislation. It also affects us in the way that our families are identified, right? The two factors that contribute most to families being in the child welfare system and kids being in the foster care system are race and poverty.
Yeah. Oh, let's not even get into the disproportionality.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
know that in the 1999 birth cohort in California, 1 in 2 Black children have had some kind of involvement in child welfare, and that they're 5.68 times more likely to have intervention at every level of child welfare than a white family?
Yeah.
And that's not even taking into consideration poverty. And that's not even talking about American Indian children
Four
and
and a half time, four and a half percent. Yeah.
Hispanic. Yeah,
Yeah. And
it's
in
wild.
Minnesota, it's 17% the
It's
population,
wild.
17 times the population index for Native American children in the child welfare system. And might I add to those that study after study has shown that increase in disproportionality in Black and Native and brown kids in the child
Mhm.
welfare system have nothing to do with increases in neglect or abuse.
No,
So
it's just
if
substantiation.
we know if we know that minority parents are not abusing or neglecting their kids more, why is it that their kids continue to be, well, maybe because in 1958 to 1964, people could take the counties could take kids from homes for broken homes, and broken homes could have been a single parent family. That could have
Hmm.
been a determination to put them in the foster care system. Why are we talking about foster care system? 70% of people in prison in this country have had some intervention in the child welfare foster care system.
Yeah,
These things add up. They add up
right.
more than just us saying, I don't know if I trust that person. If we just say we don't trust that person, how many people are we saying that to? How many decisions we make based off of that lack of trust of people who are just trying to make ends meet? And how does it affect the lives of them and their kids and their family history? Historical
Yep.
trauma is real, y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, we still have this mental models of poverty up. What's really kind of funny, not funny, it's not funny, not haha funny, ironic maybe. I grew up in poverty and I still carry a lot of the poverty values, even though I'm middle class now. Um, Quantity is important to me with food. I hoard food. When stuff is on sale, I buy all of it, right? Like it's ridiculous. Listen, when the zombie apocalypse happens, and it will, I'm hoping not in my lifetime, but if it ever does,
Tiff got you.
go to my house. Go to my house. You can live off of my
Yeah.
house for several, and both of my houses are on solar. So the food will keep in the refrigerators because we've got the solar system set up to keep the refrigerators on and the freezers on. And there's multiple because I'm a hoarder of food. It's not expired food. So all of you are like, oh my God, she's got expired food. No, I rotate it. But I'm also letting you know you could live from my pantry
You want
because
my number? You know, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm gonna go hungry again. Go ahead.
You know what my number one pet peeve is? Leftovers that get thrown away. I can't stand it
I'm same,
because my
same.
my grandma, that was, people would get beaten over that.
My
You left the chicken. No one ate the chicken this week. I'm never spending money on that KFC ever again. Right? That's
my-
embedded into my head, hardwired. When I see good food get thrown away, it is a physical response to what I experienced in the poverty mindset, which is why I
Miss,
have this
yeah,
beautiful figure now.
yeah. Mr. Salcido has a pet peeve of mine that if I have something that is like been in the fridge maybe almost too long, never spoiled. I don't cook for spoiled food, so nobody again worry
Mhm.
about that. I'm not that bad of a hoarder, but I'm a clean hoarder. I'm a clean hoarder. Um, if I have something that's gonna go bad, I repurpose it, right? So I'll give an example. Let's say I have salsa that I made, like fresh salsa, and the salsa's like at its tipping point. I'll be like, I'm gonna use that salsa to make like papas con carne with salsa, right? And so now I make the papas con carne with salsa, and then we eat that one night, and then the next day we're having breakfast burritos with eggs and carne and papas and salsa. So when
Yeah.
we're done with that, we've got, so he's always like, could you stop taking one thing and turning it into something else and then something else? Like we're eating the same food for like 4 weeks. Like at one point, we're all going to die because keep reusing it. But
Yeah.
I hate to waste. I
No,
absolutely hate to waste food so
I hear
much.
you. All right. Well, Tiff, guess what? We are at the time for Tiff's hot tips.
Listen, you're not going to believe this.
Stop.
My number one hot tip, don't be an asshole. No, that's revolutionary. But it's true. It is true. Like, let's remove the stigma and stereotypes around people needing assistance. If we as a society cannot help take care of our most vulnerable populations at the same time that we have people who are bazillionaires, if we can send rockets to space, we can feed kids who are hungry. If we can send billions of dollars to countries who have their own money for their military and they have their own money and they have universal health care and they have free colleges and we can give them money, then we absolutely can afford to make sure people have housing and utilities and food and health care. And so the waste, fraud, and abuse is not happening at the extent that people believe it is at these lower levels. It is absolutely happening at the top where the decisions are being made. And if we can um, stop treating the needy people as the criminals, and still, again, do our due diligence to make sure we maintain the integrity of the program and make sure that we're doing our part to keep people honest. But please don't take it personal. If someone told you something that maybe wasn't fully true, there are going to be people who outright commit fraud. Prosecute them. Prosecute the people who are lying to you. But for the people who are maybe make them pay it back, they're not necessarily criminals. I might do some stuff. I might do some shady stuff if it makes a difference between whether my kids have a place to live or not. I might do a little bit of shady stuff, but I guarantee you people are not buying Range Rovers
You don't know
by
what people
receiving
would do in
public assistance.
crisis. Yeah, you don't know
No.
what people would do in crisis
Mm-mm.
unless you've been in
Nope.
crisis. And the other thing is, if someone does say something to you while they're in crisis, don't take it personal because if you didn't answer the phone or
Right.
it wasn't your case, they'd be doing it to somebody else because they're trying to survive. It has nothing to do with you. But that's
Right.
the intentional thought we have to have. They are not trying to do me in, even if I feel like that's what's happening. They're not doing it to me personally.
Right.
What else do I need to know to be able to find out why they're doing what they do as we are trying to correct that behavior? Very often, addressing the need will correct that behavior.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
thank you for being where you are and for doing what you do, and recognize the people, even the people who have may not told you the absolute truth, appreciate the fact that you have some influence over their lives. Otherwise, they may
Yeah.
not have lied to you. Right? So,
Right.
all right. Well, whew, I need to go
And
take a nap.
yes, well, I'm going to go serve my food to my favorite people at the San Felipe Brewing Company. But I will also, my last hot tip is, and this is just interesting for anybody who hasn't lived in poverty or maybe someone who's out of poverty who wants to remember where they came from. Go to that website, playspent.org. It is fantastic. It hasn't been updated since like 2012, so some of the minimum wage stuff is a little bit off in terms of like the actual numbers, but it's still a really good interactive experience for you to really understand what people go through in poverty even when they're working. Um, to see like the tough choices that people have to make. Uh, you never know what you're going to do until you have to make that choice. And so if we can remove some judgment and really just again stay curious, that's really the best thing that we can do.
And if you want some more information on what we were talking about when it comes to child welfare, child custody in the state of California, take a look at the California Child Welfare Indicators Project, which is housed by UC Berkeley. And if you Google CCWIP, it will come up. There's tables to look at. You can break things down by age, by race, by income, and you can prove us wrong. But those are stats
Mm-hmm.
that are turned in by each individual county. So,
Yeah. And
if you want to,
nonpartisan. Yep.
yes, do your homework, y'all. Do your homework. Don't let us tell you things. Go look at it yourself, and then try to tell us that what we're saying isn't true. All right, numbers don't lie
Yep.
unless you're lying about the
Yep.
numbers. Anyway, so all right. Well, until the next time, thank you for being here. I'm Carl,
I'm Tiff.
and keep it real, y'all. Because Carl and Tiff
Yes.
ain't nothing to mess with. Carl and Tiff ain't nothing to mess with.